I wouldn't say that I'm the biggest Final Fantasy fan out there, but I have enjoyed a couple of their titles throughout the years. I've played 12, The Zodiac Age, 13-2, 15, and then Final Fantasy VII Remake. Recently, I beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I clocked in 95 hours into the game, which is still less than other people, and I have a lot of thoughts on it, but this game has become one of my favorite open world games that I've ever played so far. While Midgar in Remake feels suffocating and bleak despite the grand architecture of the plate, we are greeted at the beginning of Rebirth with a sea of green. Many people didn't like that Remake excluded the outside Midgar, but I think in this situation it really worked in its favor because the contrast is so staggering. When we first exit the city of Calm, the cast is shocked by the difference, which is what I think we're supposed to be feeling as well. Your starting cast is who we left off with in Remake: Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, Barret, and then the newest member, Red 13. And this cast is truly the heart of the 7 series, obviously the most iconic part of the game, even though the city of Midgar is an icon in itself. Exploring the planet is overall a wonderful experience, and Cloud is able to traverse the environments with ease. The game is an open world experience, and it encourages you to explore the region by unlocking various objectives, such as these Ubisoft-like towers, and I understand when you even mention Ubisoft towers, they've become a meme in the gaming industry, but I believe this game balances the open world objectives very well compared to other open world titles. The way they show the progress bar for each region makes completing objectives really satisfying. And it's not just the towers. When you interact with these objectives called life streams, you start to learn more about the history of the specific region you're in, while also unlocking side stories sometimes. I also enjoyed a lot of the proto-relic missions, except for the last section. You also get to learn more about the enemies in the game called fiends in these fiend objectives, which you are fighting special variations of the enemies, but you get to learn their history and how they became like what they are, and it's always related to the region specifically. These fights could prove to be quite challenging, especially for me, who is not exactly mechanically strong at gaming. But the combat in this game is fantastic and flexible. Whatever challenges there are, you can account for it by either changing your build or updating your party. There is a flexibility with materia, even though there are optimal builds for each character. For example, ideally you're not gonna make Aerith into a physical attacker, and you're not gonna make Tifa into a mage, but if you really wanted to, I'm sure you could try. Blocking in this game was also very difficult for me. I've seen videos where people can land those perfect blocks so easily, and if you're able to land a perfect block, you can make enemy attacks immune, and it's so nice when you're actually able to do it, but I was struggling a lot. So as a result, I was mostly just jumping around and dodging all the time. There's an option to switch between either classic or active mode. I think this game is meant to be played in active. I personally found classic to be really slow and just not very engaging at all. Difficulty wise, I only played on normal because I didn't want to try hard on a first playthrough. If you're looking for a challenge, I've seen other content creators playing on dynamic mode and they seem to be satisfied with it. So if you want a challenge, try that, since hard mode is locked until you finish the game one time. The most criticism I've seen about this game is related to the mini games, which I can understand. A lot of the mini games to me were also a mixed bag. I really enjoyed some, and others I felt like I was fighting with the controller. It just did not feel like a smooth experience. I really loved playing Queen's Blood. I thought that was such a fun card game, but I hated most of the mini games in Costa del Sol. As I mentioned before, I disliked the ending of the Proto-Relic questline, and I also really disliked the Moogle missions. They were a pain at first, and then they add a time limit, which just makes them so aggravating, and I was so happy when I was done with it. Also, the Moogles do look really ugly in this game. I don't know why they designed it like that, but I much prefer the 16 Moogles. Though at the end of the day, the side content will sometimes reveal more about your companions, which was my favorite part about doing them. When you're going through the motions of completing all these objectives, your companions will sometimes talk through it, and you'll be able to see how they interact with each other and how they react to these events. Overall, I think it just adds more depth to the story as a whole. Sadly, I do have a lot of mixed feelings about the main story of VII Rebirth. I loved watching all these characters going on this large journey, and this is an example of like an RPG where you just feel like you're on an adventure with your friends. I didn't play the original 7, so it feels like I'm discovering things along with them, but at the same time, I felt like I didn't really learn anything, but at the same time, I learned so much, if that makes sense. Throughout the game, I felt like we were just switching up our goals to figure out where Sephiroth is and just to find Sephiroth, because he is the main goal. I realized playing the game, I was 12 hours in, having an absolute blast, just interacting with the world, but I had no clue what was happening. I'm not even mentioning other stuff that happens surrounding the main plotline of the game, because I want this to be relatively spoiler-free besides like stuff that's been advertised. But the game gets insane, especially towards the end, but I'm having a fun time with it, and I think that's what's important. I'm really enjoying trying to figure out what's happening along with the old cast and the new characters that were introduced to. I love the dynamic that Cait Sith brings to the table. He's just a silly little cat, but then he really gets attached to the characters like we do, and he starts to really prioritize their safety. I also really loved Sid Highwind and Vincent Valentine. Even though we don't get to spend as much time with them, their introductions were just very strong, and it showed off their characters nicely. Do I wish Sid and Vincent were playable? Yes, of course, but I also understand why those two were not able to be playable in this phase of the game. This game, I think, made me go insane in a good way. I am hooked, and I can't wait to see what happens in the third game. Playing the third game stresses me out a little, in a good way. I just really don't know what's happening. I mean, I'm making it sound like I have no clue what I just played, but I have a good idea of what like the series of events we go through are. It just felt very slow for how long I played this game. I felt like plot-wise, we didn't reach a lot of big story beats, or we didn't learn anything crazy mind-blowing. So the angle might look slightly different, as well as the lighting, because I was editing the footage and I realized I forgot to say if I recommend the game or not, which is the whole point of this video. Overall, I highly recommend Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I do think you will get the most out of this game if you played Remake. There is a story so far function in Rebirth, but I think you will get a better idea if you enjoy this cast and if you enjoy the way Square is telling the story if you play Remake first. Remake and Rebirth are similar in the fact that the story starts off slow in the beginning and then really kicks off at the end, like really close to the end. If that's not your vibe, then you might want to like test it out first with the first installment before you get into this really large open world, because the world of Rebirth is very grand and it is a joy to explore, and when you do complete things, it's very satisfying, and I think the open world content is balanced quite well. They also change things up enough where it doesn't doesn't feel monotonous unlike other games. Exploring the different regions is very satisfying because of how unique they are from one another, and each just tell a different story, from what characters inhabit the regions or what history they've been through, and it's just a very fun time to explore these areas with the characters. If anything, you just might not like the direction they're going with the story, especially if you played the original game. But I didn't play the original game, so I don't exactly have that problem to deal with. Again, I just want to emphasize that the strong point of this game to me lies purely in the characters. Watching how they interact with each other is just such a fun thing, and I love how each of them support each other through all the highs and lows that this journey is bringing in various ways. I think Rebirth is a fantastic introduction to the world outside of Midgar, and I can't wait to see how the third game is going to follow up on everything. A lot has been set up, and I can't wait to see more of the characters that were introduced in this game, such as Kate Sith, but more specifically Sid and Vincent, because we really didn't get to interact with them in this game that much. I really love this game, and I think if you do enjoy this 7 universe, you will be able to enjoy this as well, if you can move past like all the open world stuff. If that's not something you enjoy, I think these characters really pull their weight in heightening the story a lot. Editing Ina again because I completely forgot to talk about Yuffie Kisaragi, and I feel like shit about it because she is a sweetheart and I will protect her at all costs. She is just such a light in the cast. Her and Kate Sith are just super positive energy, and I mean, Yuffie is literally a 16-year-old girl and she acts like it, and I adore her, and I just want her to be happy, and I hope she gets all the materia she needs. Yuffie is fantastic, and I can't believe I forgot to talk about her in my initial video. I hope in the next game that we go to Wutai and we get to see her home some more, because she speaks of it so highly, and you know, she's a sweetie. Love her. Can't wait to see more of her. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I do have another video planned where I try to go over the plot of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's not necessarily like a plot explained type of video. It's mostly me interacting with the game more and the plot and just trying to piece it together for myself. Sort of like I'm having, I guess, a conversation with the viewers, you know, conversation with the game, and just trying to piece it all together, and I'll show like what I did. Hopefully it's good. If not, engagement, you know. I hope people in the comments will correct me on anything, or, you know, just give me insight to anything that I missed. I think it's much more fun that way. Anyway, if you watch towards the end, who's your waifu in these series? Is it Aerith or is it Tifa? Or maybe is it Barrett? I'm personally an Aerith girly, but that's not a reason to attack me. I've seen the shipping wars, I've seen what is happening, but I'm too old for that. All of you though are wild. I was a Naruto girly back in the day, so I went through my own shipping wars, but just relax. We're all just trying to have a good time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe for the next video, and especially if you're curious about my plot analysis, subscribe so you can see it. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.